How can you do your sprint training all year round? How can you maximize your ability to really sprint fast? How do you incorporate the necessary workouts into your training? That's what we're going to talk about in this video. Now, this is a follow-on from my last week's video. And in it, I talked about not doing tempo training, tempo running with the jumpers in my group. There's a belief that tempo running training will be a benefit to long jumpers and triple jumpers and short sprinters. From my perspective, I don't think it is. Now, this provoked quite a lot of responses both on my YouTube channel and through my Instagram. Just reading a couple now. Should long jumpers be sprinting longer distances like 300 meters or focus on short sprints? If your jumpers also sprint, still no tempo, or do you add it in? Okay, we need to start from the premise that to get the most from your training, you need to train specifically. So if you want to run fast, you need to run fast. So how do you achieve that? Well, for me, it's about incorporating speed work, sprint drills, fast movements throughout the training year. We don't back off at the start of the training year significantly. Yes, we will drop speeds down a little bit because athletes, jumpers will be coming back to training. But as you can see, we'll be doing downhill runs, downhill drills, sprints up steps and so forth. So this is all keeping that high rate of velocity, muscle firing capability within the athletes from the day we start training. Now I'm going to say back in the day, although I do know that coaches and athletes, jumpers still do train this way, i.e. back in the day we used to run 300 and 200 meter reps to start our training year. There was a thought that you needed to get fitter in order to handle the more specific work. But is that really logical? Is that the best way to develop that fitness? I don't think so. Hence, that's why we don't do a lot of tempo running, virtually no tempo running at all in our training. The fitness is developed through the specific quickness, the movements, the drills, the plyometrics and shorter distance runs up to 60, possibly 90 meters. That distance enables the athlete to run quickly. If you're doing 300 meter reps, 200 meter reps, then invariably you're going to be running slower. You're going to be developing lactate, depending on the recovery and the speed that you run, and therefore you're going to not be developing speed. You're going to be developing speed endurance. Now that's great if you're a 400 meter runner, but it's something that you don't really need as a long jumper or a triple jumper. Now, there are those that argue that you do need that type of fitness because you need greater work capacity, as I've alluded to earlier. Also, they believe that that gives the jumper some mental fortitude, the ability to push through, to train hard. However, you can develop that fortitude and that ability to train hard through other mechanisms and means and avoid what I believe to be a consequence of interval training, tempo running, detraining the athlete from their ability to jump. At this time of the training year, a typical training session of mine will last 1.5 to 2 hours, and that will include numerous units of gradually increasing in intensity drills and runs and plyometrics. So therefore, we are developing that specific fitness required to jump through more specific means, and the quantity of those repetitions and the quality of those repetitions is what is going to produce heightened speed and power outputs from the start of the training year. It's not something that comes in laterally. Therefore, we should be able to evolve the ability to express greater and greater amounts of speed and power across the whole of the training year. There's not going to be a tail off and then an increase. It should theoretically, or actually, as I found in my experience, be a progressive increase in speed and power across the entire training year. We also need to understand what is meant by tempo running, as there are some various viewpoints and diversions in terms of what it actually means. To me, tempo training is interval training run at a manageable pace with a relatively good recovery that's often used for recovery purposes between more intense sessions. This is something that Canadian coach Charlie Francis brought into his training in the 80s and 90s. It was a staple ingredient, and I think from that day onwards it's become something that many other coaches around the world think that they also need to include. I've had athletes in my training group go to America, for example, and do tempo training as a mode of recovery between, as I said, the more intense training workouts. The problem is that they were running them together in a group, 200s, and the runs became competitive. So they might have been instructed to run 6 200s in 27 seconds, low intensity, for a 21.5 second 200 meter runner. However, they're completing those runs at 24 seconds, 23 seconds. Therefore, they are stressing their anaerobic system too much and producing lactate, and therefore they are not getting the recovery from that session that the coach outlined as its requirement in the first place. Speed endurance, or anaerobic speed endurance, is just that. That's different to tempo running. That's where you do perform deliberately constructed interval training sessions at fast paces relevant to the distance that you run. As a 400 meter runner, you might be doing 300 meter reps, 500 meter reps, even 600 meter reps, for example, at designated paces. Now those are going to promote your ability to sustain for the 400 meter race. But we don't need that as long and triple jumpers. Our efforts last up to 5 seconds from the start of the run-up to completion of the jump in the pit. It's the lactic energy system that we are utilising and not the short-term anaerobic system. Now, of course, these energy systems all overlap. If you're training short bursts and then you're recovering between reps, you're going to develop some form of aerobic fitness and longer-term anaerobic fitness as well. However, it's the emphasis on the energy system that I think is crucial when it comes to maximising returns from your specific training. And that's why I don't include tempo running in the jumpers training, nor do we do anaerobic speed endurance training either to any significant amount. Now, if a jumper also wants to run 100 and in particular 200 meter sprints, then the training does need to include longer reps at close to race pace, and we need to build up to that ability over a period of time. However, I employ the short to long methodology when it comes to that. We start fast and then we add the endurance on to the speed. Therefore, we should be maximising our ability to quickly get up to speed and hold it over a longish period, i.e. 100 metres or 200 metres. Now, if my jumpers were sprinters who were going through numerous rounds in competitions, I may have to amend the approach slightly differently to give them more capability to recover between rounds. But in terms of running a couple of 100 metres perhaps on a competition day and a one-off 200 metres on a separate day, then they should be fine. I will tweak the training accordingly, but I do need to know that they are aiming for the 100 and 200 metre races from the time we start training, so I can adjust their training specifically. I have one particular athlete who I train remotely in America who is going to run some 200s and even a 300 metres, so I'm adapting my training to accommodate those needs. And in the coach athlete members area of my channel, I'm going to go into a lot more detail about how I'm constructing those sessions and how it's working. On that subject, if you'd like to help me and support the channel, then do consider becoming a channel member. For as little as $1.99 a month, dollars or pounds, you can do just that. And if you want to become a coach athlete member at £22.99 a month or dollar equivalent, then you will get exclusive content such as that I've alluded to, where I go into greater detail and show my training plans about the specifics of athlete preparation, sprinter and jumper preparation. Returning to the subject matter of this video, of course your training philosophy and your training plan has a huge bearing on how you train speed. Now, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but utilising a block periodization method and an undulating periodization model as opposed to a linear periodization, traditional periodization model can make it a lot easier to incorporate speed throughout the training cycle. The problem is knowing how to do that. And again, that's a subject that I go into in my coach athlete member videos. I'm going to be a guest on Colm Bourke's Track and Field Performance podcast, and he's going to ask me, or has asked me, depending on the time that you're watching this video, various questions about how I prepare long and triple jumpers, and no doubt we'll be delving deep into the anaerobic tempo running needs area. So do check out the Track and Field Performance podcast, details on screen now. Hopefully this follow-on video gives you more of an idea as to how I train my long jumpers and triple jumpers. If you have any specific questions on the subject matter of this particular video, or indeed any of my others, then do leave a comment in the section below or through my other social media. And good luck, of course, with your autumn fall training. And please like, subscribe and share.